Giving free one-sided therapy to the stars of reality. It's Rachel and Kacie with CBT and the TV. CBT and the TV.
Hello, darling steers and fellow queers, and welcome back to CBT in the TV. I am Kacie, not Rachel.
And I am Rachel, not Kacie.
And we are very excited to see you all today. We will be going over Dance Moms Season 1, Episode 2, titled Wildly Inappropriate. And boy, howdy, is there just a lot to get through there, and we will be jumping in shortly. But first, let's check in with Rachel and Kacie's Jar of Fun. See what we pull out here today. Ooh, what is something that you are proud of this week, Rachel?
So I was helping with tech for community theater. So I was backstage, and there were a couple of quick changes that, like, we had less than a minute. There was one that was, we were just changing her top, but we could do it in like 5 seconds.
Nice.
So I was very proud of our system and how quickly we were able to do it, how smoothly we ended up being able to do it.
Awesome. I love that. I remember quick changes from being in theater, and those can be stressful. For me this week, I know this will be going out later than Halloween. Our first episode went up on Halloween, and we post every other week. But the week that we are recording this was actually the week of Halloween. And I am proud of being crowned the queen of Halloween in my neighborhood. I really look forward to it. Halloween's my favorite holiday, and I tend to go probably a little bit harder than I need to and overbuy on the candy and all that good stuff, but it means that all the neighborhood kids get to visit my house multiple times and take as much as they want, and it just makes me really happy to spoil all the kids and make their Halloween hopefully something that they remember happily. And yeah, it was really fun, and I was really happy and proud. Okay, let's go ahead and check in on our daily snacks and drinks because we want to make sure we are fed and hydrated. I can see what you're eating, Rachel, and I think some of our listeners can probably hear it, but for those who can't see us, do you want to tell us what you're eating?
Popcorn.
And what are you drinking?
Costco popcorn.
That is important. Costco.
Very important.
And what are you drinking?
Just water.
Hey, there's nothing just
hydrated.
There is nothing just about water. Without water, we don't have a lot of things. I am doing a super spoony special. My snack is also a drink. It is a sugar cookie protein shake with coconut milk and sugar cookie creamer and an Alani protein coffee because my stomach is not doing food at the moment. Sticking on the Alani trend, I also have an Alani Cosmic Stardust energy drink and then some water also in my giant Yeti off to the side. So now that we have gotten all of ourselves situated, I think we're ready to go ahead and get in to the episode. This episode, the first season is super interesting, and I'm paying attention to things this watch through that I haven't paid attention before. Like, this episode starts, they're already doing pyramid. They aren't walking into pyramid. Abby's not calling them into pyramid. They're already seated doing pyramid when the episode starts. So there's no preamble. We get nope, there's already in there. Abby talks about how last week at West Coast Dance Explosion in Phoenix, they got their butts kicked, which isn't true. We know because we talked about that last week. They got within less than 30 points of a perfect score with the group routine, and the trio won. They did very well, all things considered. Abby alludes to what happened with Chloe's headband. She says she went for years by herself with all of the kids in her studio to competition, which I
don't believe that.
That's exactly how I feel about it. Like, I'm sorry. Either that was when her company was a whole lot smaller and they were just going to local competitions, or I think she probably had a few helpers and she's just Chrissy and Kelly talk about this now, that Abby used to just say things, especially once the cameras were there, that people, because no one was going to interrupt her and say anything, especially when the cameras were rolling, people would have to take as gospel. And I feel like this is one of those moments. But Abby continues to say that she used to go by herself, and now moms only want to go because they're reliving their childhood through their kids. So when she used to go by herself, she says what happened last week never happened at all because, she's perfect. That she then asks Nia in front of all the girls, how do you think you did specifically, like you, Nia? And Nia says that she thinks they all could have improved. And Abby says, well, what do you think you could do better? And Nia says, her feet.
My feet.
And Abby says, right. And I tell you over and over and over again, your feet, your feet, your feet. We get Maddie in an interview saying that she thinks that Abby yells at people too much, but she thinks it's just because Abby cares about them and she wants them to be better dancers. Abby then moves on to talking about the trio, and she says it was just bad. She asks Chloe if there's anything she could have done about her headband, and Chloe just like nods like she had any choice there. Also, I feel like this is Abby kind of rewriting history to make it seem like gospel, because we now know that this costume was a costume that Chloe had worn many times before. This was a trio the girls had for a whole year before. I don't think Christy just did something different with the costume that she'd never done before. I think all three of the moms got Maddie, Chloe, and Paige ready the same way they always had. And this was just a one-off. Like, how was Chloe supposed to see that coming? How was Christy supposed to see that coming? And how was she ever supposed to do anything about it? Like, good Lord. Oy vey. Anyway, Abby starts in announcing the numbers for the week, and she says the group routine will be electricity, and she makes the girls repeat it. Electricity.
As if they, like, can't speak.
Like,
or
yeah,
don't
like
know
she's
the
worried about
word.
them not being able to
Pronounce.
Yeah, so weird. Abby says in an interview that this group will be West Coast jazz or LA jazz, very hot, very sassy, like what you'd see in a music video. And she thinks this dance will take her girls to another level and bring something out of them we haven't seen before, which technically she's right about. But boy,
In a different way.
I just, for any of our listeners who are familiar with what's to come with electricity, I
was also really excited. I'm sure that, you're going to mention it, but this is the first time that we are introduced to the iconic solo that is Cry.
Oh yes. I there's a whole lot of stuff in this episode that is canon for the rest of the series. So finally, Abby addresses the pyramid, even though we started the whole darn episode sitting at pyramid. This is the first time she talks about it. And the only one on the whole pyramid that Abby talks about is, do you want to guess who it is? Rachel, do you want to guess who she talks about?
I have no idea. Maddie.
She said she was so good last week and her mom was good last week. And that's the first time that Abby mentions someone's placement on the pyramid having to do with their mom. Of course, Maddie is at the top of the pyramid. She says Maddie will be front and center in the group dance, which the kind of choreography that we're going to see in Electricity, there's no one really front and center. It's a lot of movement between the rows. So I don't know. I don't know if this is Abby not sure about how her choreography is going to look for the dance yet, or if this was her saying something for the cameras to give Maddie more, like trying to get Maddie seen, trying to put Maddie in a certain position in people's brains. I don't know, but it's interesting to me. And Maddie in interview says she's not trying to be rude, but she thinks she's one of the best dancers in the group. And I can't tell if this was a produced thing or, because, like, don't get me wrong, that's like asking an 8-year-old who is in like regular music class but takes like a lot of private music lessons if they think that they're very good, like how they think they place in that music group. They'd probably say, well, I'm not trying to be rude, but I think I'm one of the better ones, and they are. Maddie had the most solo or the most privates in that group at the time, so she was highly advanced. She could dance kind of parallel to Brooke, which we know Brooke was also very advanced for her age, and she was 13. But we also know at this time that the producers were trying to get Maddie to say things that made her sound
appear.
Yeah, like she thought she was all that. So, yeah, it gave me the sad. Abby, we're back in pyramid. Abby puts this big X next to Maddie on the pyramid and says everybody's goal should be to be right here. And it's hard to tell if she means everybody's goal should be to be Maddie or if everybody's goal should be to be at the top of the pyramid or if it's some mixture of both. Does not look good. Abby never addresses the rest of pyramid, so I did write down the rest of the pyramid order. Maddie is, of course, on top. Then we have Paige and Chloe in the middle. Then Brooke, Nia, and Kenzie at the bottom. Abby goes on to announce solos. Maddie, of course, is doing the contemporary lyrical number Cry, which becomes a well-known,
Iconic.
yes, and a well-known solo kind of throughout Dance Moms. It will come up multiple times. Chloe will also be doing a solo, and she will be doing a musical theater solo called Baby Mine. An important thing to note here is both of these solos were the girls' regular studio solos. Maddie's solo, her music was already part of the Dance Moms TV catalog, whereas Chloe's music was actually, her solo was titled Ma, He's Making Eyes at Me, and her music was not a part of the Dance Moms catalog, so her music had to be switched, and some changes to her choreography had to be made to match the new music. Christy says in an interview that Melissa doesn't like her because Chloe is Maddie's biggest competition, and that she in turn doesn't really like Melissa because she knows Melissa's true colors. Which in the show, we hear a lot of talk about the Maddie and Chloe rivalry, but I think what sometimes gets overlooked is in the early seasons, there was really a very produced undercurrent of Melissa versus Christy. They made the two of them talk about each other a lot. And don't get me wrong, those two have issues with each other, but we also know that they would be there for each other in a heartbeat if one of them needed anything. But saying stuff like this, I don't know, it's interesting to me. Abby dismisses the moms, and we start rehearsal with the girls. And in voiceover, Abby tells us where we're going for competition, which is Star Quest competition in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And going to Lancaster is going to be a big deal in this episode with the group number that they're taking, because both the comp and this area are known to be highly conservative. We join the Moms in Dance jail with Christy watching the girls, and she talks a bit about the Maddie and Chloe rivalry. She says her goal is for Chloe to beat Maddie this year, which, I don't know, I found that to be an odd. She doesn't usually talk about any of the girls beating the other girls. So I don't know if she, like, I don't know when they would have gotten that soundbite from her, if it was during, like, a really bad week and she'd seen something happen. And it was interesting to me. Again, I'm catching stuff on this watch through that I hadn't really noticed before, and that stuck out to me because I was like, that's not usually how she words things. She doesn't usually pit the girls against one another. Then we see bits of Christy hyping Chloe up before class, telling Chloe to dance good. And then Christy says she feels like she pushes Chloe because it's her job as Chloe's mom to motivate her because she thinks that Chloe has star potential. The moms talk about Pyramid, about how Abby was telling all the girls to be like Maddie, and you can see Melissa become like visibly irritated and upset by this. Holly points out that Abby had a correction for every girl in the group except for Maddie. And one of the things we now know is Abby tended to correct Maddie in private and praise her in public, and then did the opposite with the other girls. Which, from a developmental standpoint, and just from like people in general, we know that's not what you want to do. You want to do the opposite. You want to do what she's doing with Maddie, which is praise publicly, correct privately. Christy talks with the moms about the upcoming Maddie Chloe showdown and how she's anticipating Abby spending a lot of time with Maddie and that Christy will just have to work with Chloe herself, which is foreshadowing. We cut to Melissa in an interview saying that she doesn't care if what any of the other moms think because Maddie is a star and maybe Maddie's just the favorite because she's the best and she follows the rules and she pays attention. And her goal for Maddie this season is to win Dancer of the Year nationally. She also says that she really does think that Maddie is just the best dancer in their studio.
Forgets that she has another kid.
That's the other thing is she's never talking about Mackenzie. And I don't know why. Because originally Mackenzie wasn't supposed to be on the show. They fought for Mackenzie to be on the show. So why are we not talking about her? Don't know. She then says she doesn't think the other moms are jealous of her being Melissa. She thinks the other moms are jealous of Maddie because Maddie gets all the attention. And this becomes a very large problem moving forward because anytime there's an inequity, like Maddie has all of the solos, or not all of the solos. I keep saying solos when I mean privates. All the private lessons for the week. And the moms are like, hey, we can't schedule privates because all of them are for Maddie. Could you maybe swap us one or can we work this out? Abby and Melissa are all like, well, you're just jealous of a 9-year-old. No, we're not jealous. You're saying our kids need privates because they need to work on this stuff, but then you won't offer us any privates. It's not equitable. And
it's also gaslighting.
Yes. It's very it's gaslighty. There's no logic, so you can't argue with it. There's no defense for it. And if you do try and argue with that, right, you're a very shitty person because who's jealous of a 9-year-old and who defends that? Who defends
I do think we should clarify what we mean by gaslighting because it is one of those terms that is often thrown around kind of unnecessarily and is not necessarily used accurately. So in this context, gaslighting would be somebody's telling you, well, you're the problem, you need to fix it. And you say, well, that's great. Here's what I would plan to do to fix it. And they say, sorry, too bad. They make you feel like you're crazy for asking for self-advocating, for asking for your needs, for communicating your feelings. You could say, I'm feeling sad. And they would say, no, you're not. So it's basically putting the responsibility onto somebody else, but then not letting them use that responsibility and taking that power away from them.
Like when the moms are saying, we're feeling excluded, we're feeling like there's an injustice here or an inequity. And then Abby and Melissa say, no, you're just jealous. And you're not even jealous of the situation. You're jealous of a 9-year-old. That's taking away, that's not even invalidating. That's saying your emotions don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we mean by gaslighting. It's making it so they can't argue. Because again, how can you argue when someone's saying you're jealous of a 9-year-old? Because all Abby and Melissa are going to see now is you're defending yourself about being jealous of a 9-year-old. And who defends themselves against a 9-year-old? That's gross. So yeah, it really it sets everyone else up for absolute failure. There's no way out.
You're put into a no-win situation, but are being told that you need to win.
Well, and that you
Which is what
are
Abby's
winning.
doing.
A lot of the times Abby is saying the other moms are winning. And that Maddie, in fact, Maddie and Melissa are the ones on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's super yucky, super icky. And that's something that we want to make sure our listeners are able to identify and notice. And it'll be a recurring theme, especially on this series. Dance Moms being that series, of course. Then we get Abby in an interview talking about her mom and saying that her mom was a really great dance teacher, which is true, and that she is continuing that legacy. And that when she was young, herself being Abby, when she was young, she realized her talents were better used for choreography than for dance performance, and she started her dance company at 14. I think this was very smart of Abby because we have seen videos of Abby performing dance, and the internet is forever, and that just does not work in Abby's favor, because the way Abby yells at some people about not being able to do things when she herself cannot do those things. But I think this is Abby saying, right, I couldn't do those things, but I could do choreography and organization. So I stopped doing dance as
I played to my strengths instead.
Yes. So I don't think it's great to tear down Abby as a dancer. It can be hard not to when we hear her tear down her dancers, but it's not a great thing to say because she's aware, she's self-aware, she knows she was not a good dancer, she's aware of that. But another problem that this brings up is Abby saying that she started her company at 14. Brooke, being our oldest in this group, she is 13. Abby has already started in on Brooke at this time. Right now, it's not when the cameras are on, but telling Brooke, like, you're about to be, you're getting close, you're about to be 14, you're already 13. I started my company at 14. Right. But Brooke, you've been telling her whole life, is a very talented performer. So Brooke is doing what you were, but she's doing the performance version. She's in dance every day of the week. She's going to competition every weekend. You couldn't do both performance and start your own company, Abby, and neither can she. So this is going to become an issue because she truly believes that because she started a company at 14 years old, that any child that gets to 13, they are a mature adult. She thinks that she was a mature adult at 14 years old when she started her company, which isn't true. She didn't start her own dance studio at 14. She had a small group that went to compete out of her mom's dance studio. And this will be an issue moving forward. The girls are now rehearsing the group routine, and the moms start to notice that the choreography is a little inappropriate. Kelly says that the move she sees Brooke doing is way too sexy, and this is just as Abby tells Brooke to make it look like she's 17 years old. Kelly now in an interview tells us she's not sure how they're going to react to this at StarQuest in Lancaster. Lancaster, Pennsylvania, for any of our listeners or viewers who don't know, is a very conservative area. It houses a large Amish contingent for the U.S., and this kind of ripples out into the non-Amish area around it. People are just more conservative there, and apparently StarQuest, one of the reasons that they have a competition in Lancaster is StarQuest was known to be a more conservative competition. Kelly goes on to say that they don't usually go to StarQuest. It's not usually their kind of competition because Abby sometimes does stuff that's not up their alley, so she doesn't know why they're going. Abby is now in an interview and telling us that she was inspired to do this week's group number by going to Phoenix last week and seeing how hot and skimpy and dynamic all the kids were there on stage. And the way she's talking about the kids in Phoenix last week is giving me the ick. And it also said to me in my head, like, Abby is making rash decisions. She saw something last week. Now she can't, like, not do it this week. She has to do it even though she's not putting together, like, we're going to Lancaster.
I also wonder how much of that was a production decision.
I do too, but I also know and want to note that at this point, this was supposed to be the docu-series um, portion. So this was not when Dance Moms was Dance Moms. It hadn't even premiered yet. Production may have asked Abby to do certain things, but I'm not sure how much of a say they had in her choreography or her ideas for things. They might have had a say in where they were going for competition because they had to get into competitions every weekend, which could have been difficult on the registration side. But as far as coming up with the ideas for dances, I'm not sure that that was production. And I'm not sure that production would have looked at what was happening in Phoenix and said, you have to do it and you have to do it this week.
Mm.
So, because it wouldn't surprise me if this was something that Abby chose to do, because we see it in later seasons when she visits Dancing with the Stars, she automatically has to do a tango. And while that could be production, it also feels like something Abby would do. She doesn't always make the most rational or seemingly educated decisions for how much information we know that Abby has about things.
It's almost as if like she wants to be relevant or hop on a trend before it becomes too much of the new trend.
Well, that, and she also wants to do what she wants to do and thinks that because she wants to do it, it will go well no matter what. No matter what people around her are telling her or warning her. Abby's now in an interview and she talks about how she doesn't have kids of her own, but she practically raises her dancers since she has a lot of them from the ages of 3 to 18. And she always uses this quote when raising the dancers. The best parenting that a parent can do is raise their child to survive on their own, which she thinks she does. Which, after seeing this group of girls come to the fruition of adulthood, and this is a group of girls that spent like the most concentrated time with Abby, I think we can all say that's not true. These girls require a lot of support to manage the emotional damage and trauma that Abby set upon them. And that is in no way a dig at the girls. Childhood trauma changes the brain. These girls all had their brains damaged and changed thanks to Abby. Great job, babe. Great job, Abs.
And a lot of times with trauma, it almost pauses our brains at the age where the trauma happened. And then it slowly develops from there once like your brain's like, oh, okay, we're okay again. So these girls, I mean, they are very mature dancers, but whether or not they are mature and adjusted, like seeing where how far Nia has come, she was probably one of the more resilient of the kids. She everything like it brushed off her back, and she did not seem to be as impacted as some of the other girls that took Abby's word as gospel, who were very hurt by Abby.
And the thing I loved about this interview where Abby's talking about what a great parent, in air quotes, she views herself as, it's capped off by a clip of her telling Nia, ironically, that she needs to use more butt. It's all about the butt in this choreography. And I was just like, thank you, producers, because we absolutely needed this combination. Great job. And my script has now turned bright pink, which means we are visiting with our friend Kathy. Melissa is telling the moms about Kathy up in dance jail, and the moms are confused for a lot of reasons. Why are we adding a girl to our team who's so young? We already can't do stuff with Mackenzie. Why isn't Kathy keeping her daughter at her own studio? And Melissa says she can't answer any of these questions. She does not know. All she knows is that Kathy has money, and that if Christy and Kelly think that Melissa is perky, just you wait. Oh boy. Melissa says that Kathy reminds her of Mr. Rogers in real life, which is a line that like always made me laugh because I think the way that Kathy was kind of putting on for the moms, or especially Melissa, in front of the cameras, like I was like, I could see that. This is a good, yep. And the moms are like, well, if that's what she's like, how on earth is she ever going to deal with Abby? It's now the next
Little
day.
do we know.
Yeah, like, well, little did Melissa know. Melissa did not know. Melissa was only seeing the side of Kathy that,
Kathy wanted her to see.
Exactly. That's the end of day one. We're now on to the next day, and we visit the girls in the dressing room and den, and Abby comes in and announces that before they start rehearsal, we're going to do a costume fitting for the group routine. The girls are super excited. And the fitting starts, and Abby calls Nia in first, and the moms are all either appalled or shocked at the costume. Holly asks, where's the rest of her costume? And Christy says the iconic line, so I guess we're going for skin to win. And Abby replies, yep. Like, Abby knew what this costume was affecting. And for our listeners who didn't either watch the episode or don't want to see this, the thing is, the girl's costume from the week before when they did Party was actually a tinier costume. It was a skirt and a bra top and had less material. The costume for Electricity is booty shorts with like a tutu skirt added to the bottom, like the butt bottom, and another sports bra top, and then these sleeves, these gloved sleeves that come up to their elbows, and then knee-high stockings. The thing of it is, for any of our listeners who know, if you are a femme-presenting person and you're wearing a tank top and shorts and you put on knee-high stockings, you now somehow appear more naked. Why? Don't know.
I don't know.
It breaks the laws of physics, but it somehow appears this way. And that is what the girls look like. While it covers a lot more than their costume the week before, it looks like they're now much more naked than they were the week before, which
I also think it's important to note that the bra top it looked semi-corseted. And so there was that implication as well of that there.
This costume implies a lot. While it doesn't actually do a lot, we'll get it. There are costumes that do that later in the series that we will get to. This is not that costume. It's just what it implies. Again, it's got ruffles all over the butt. You've got the knee-high stockings that they eventually tape up to be thigh-high stockings. You've got the mesh gloves that come up. It looks trashy.
It makes me think of the fetishized anime, like girl students.
Yes. While they're wearing their schoolgirl uniform, which is supposed to be like prim and proper, it's how we view those things. It's the lens you see them through.
Wasn't this also the costume where they call them prostitutes?
Yes, and I will get to that. In an interview, Christy says that in Lancaster, their normal dance wear, which I assume she's talking about like the stuff that the girls wear to their dance lessons every day, she thinks those things would give people heart attacks, which she's right, because the girls are often wearing booty shorts and sports bras to dance class because they need to be able to not overheat and move a lot. She thinks those would give people heart attacks, let alone these things, which she's right. Kelly says that the judges won't see it that these girls are dancing in bras. They see it as their costumes. The thing to remember here is that Kelly was a dancer. And she's right. Usually, like if they were going to, they don't even have to be going to LA or Phoenix for this costume to be okay-ish. But they shouldn't be going to StarQuest in Lancaster. This is a very bad, terrible, horrible, no good, very bad choice. Bad time.
And in child development and psychology, like a lot of times I'll have parents come in and are expressing concerns. Hey, my kid is doing this or they're behaving in this way. Their kid doesn't actually know that thing is potentially a sexual thing.
Mhm.
They're just a kid. And so these kids don't have the adult context to look at these costumes and go, that looks like a streetwalker. And
Yeah.
us as adults, we would look at it and be like, we have that context. These kids are just
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, it's shiny and it's blue and it's got a tutu.
And it was metallic and again, like black mesh with ruffles all over it. It was a lot of things that the girls loved. And it was a new costume. They weren't having to pick something out of the costume shop and slap it on for the weekend. They got something brand new, which was exciting for them. To them, this is playing dress up. It's what the moms are seeing and being aware that they're going to perform and what they're going to perform, because the moms are already not happy with what they've seen as far as choreography.
Mhm.
And so the moms are aware and they're putting those two things together. They're like, I do not like where this is headed. The girls aren't aware of that.
No.
So Kelly makes the comment about how the judges aren't going to view it this way, even though we kind of know in this case the judges will be. And she kind of bites herself on the nose here, because the next kid to walk out is Paige. And while she's largely okay with what's going on, seeing Paige in this does shock her. She goes, "Oh, you're showing off your sexy little bod," like, which seems like an inappropriate.
Yeah.
It seems like an
Yeah.
inappropriate comment to make, but you could like see the look on her face and hear the like she's trying to say something. She's dealing with something with humor. And again, I think here it's important to remember that Abby was Kelly's dance teacher. So she's responding to her authority and being aware that her kid is now responding to the same authority. And so she's doing the trauma response, right? She's dealing with it with humor. She's like, I am so uncomfortable. My brain is being tickled. Look at my baby. And also, I can't say anything to. I just said that I'm not uncomfortable with this. And I said it in front of my dance teacher, who's my kid's dance teacher. And I am in so much trouble right now. Like, you can just tell the layers of discomfort that Kelly is feeling and that she doesn't really know how to respond. And I feel like we see this a lot with Kelly. And sometimes I think it can get Kelly vilified because Kelly can seem permissive, but Kelly grew up differently
Under
than the
Abby.
other moms. Yeah. Holly then says they don't look like little girls, they look like little tarts. And it's one of our first moments of just sheer Queen Holliness that I adore. Like, she just says it right in front of the girls, right in front of Abby. She doesn't give a crap. And Christy points out that they, again, like what we just said, these girls have had smaller costumes. They've had smaller costumes. It's just that these look sleazy. And they do. Holly says it's too sexy, and then Abby tries to reframe and say, well, let's not say sexy. Let's not use that word. Let's say skimpy. And Holly is having absolutely none of it and says, you can say skimpy, you can say scandalous. It's too much for little girls.
I think a lot of the problem is just the context in which the costume is going to be applied.
Exactly. That's the thing, is I think if they were doing a dance like party and wearing this costume, it might not be such a big deal. Or if they were wearing a costume like what they were for party and doing this dance, or if some of the moves in the dance were changed, it'd be a little different. But it's not. It's the amalgamation of all the things. And the fact that they're going to Lancaster, where if they were going to Phoenix, they're going to see stuff that is a lot more like this, stuff that might even be more shocking, in air quotes, than this. It's the fact that they're going to be going somewhere where this is not what they're going to see. So when these girls walk out on stage, everybody is going to have their jaws on the floor and not be able to look away. And the moms are aware that their daughters are going to be very exposed, and it makes them uncomfortable. And they also know that they're arguing with Abby. There's no arguing with Abby, so they don't know how to protect their daughters. Abby deflects from Holly, saying like this is out of line, inappropriate, by saying,
as she does.
There'll be 800 kids who look just like her. Chloe comes out in her costume next, and Abby asks her how she feels about what she's wearing, because she always likes to try and use the kids to justify what she's doing. And Abby says she loves it. And Abby just thinks she has made the biggest point in the world with this. She thinks because Chloe said she loved what she's wearing that the moms now have to shut up. The moms then point out, like, Chloe, you're a child. You don't know any better. It's fine. Like,
They don't have the context.
Exactly. And the moms know that. Christy asks Chloe if her dad would like the costume, and Abby says her dad doesn't have an opinion because he doesn't help out at the studio. I don't love that Christy asked Chloe, like, what do you think your dad would think of this? Mainly because it comes off as, like, you know, we ask little girls what their dads would think of something that they're wearing. We never ask little boys what their moms would think of something that... Personally, like, I think I would love to think that Christy meant, like, what would your other parent who's not here right now, who's at work, think of what you're wearing? Like, think of what's going on. I'm your only parent who's here. I gotta remind you that, like, I speak for both parents right now. But it gives kind of that, like, you know, misogynist ick. And I also don't love that Abby only gives credit to parents who show up, but then also doesn't want parents there. I don't know. In an interview, Christy says that it's just embarrassing for their kids to be dressed this way. And she says that the iconic line, they look like prostitutes, which Christy would like everyone to know that she did not come up with prostitutes. That was a Don Check original. And it was coined several years before this when all the girls were made to dance on chairs. I think it was a Chicago number. And Don was just like, they don't look like little girls. They look like prostitutes.
I love that.
I do too. Now we're with Kathy and Vivi, and they're driving to the ALDC. And in voiceover, Kathy tells us that Abby only requires a few things of students to join her team. Money, time, dedication, she has all three. And that's why she's bringing Vivi to the ALDC, because Abby... 2.5 hours. Can we just point out, it's only 2.5 hours from Ohio to the studio, from Canton, Ohio to the studio. But when they drive to Lancaster in Pennsylvania, it's 4 hours.
Yeah. It's like driving into, because of where we grew up, it's like driving across the state is 5 hours.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. I was like, I guess it's only like 3 hours from where I live right now in Washington to Portland, Oregon. But then if I wanted to drive to Spokane, Washington, it's like 4 to 6 hours, depending on which way you go in traffic. But I'm still...
And who's driving?
When we get to our takeaways, mine's going to be what I learned in this episode. I don't understand the East Coast. Abby then has a private with Vivi, and Kathy gets to stay in the room because she's a dance teacher. And we see that Vivi doesn't know correct dance vocab. In an interview, Abby tells us that this happens a lot. She gets new students coming to her studio from other studios, and they say things like flying saucer leap instead of grand jeté, and Abby absolutely hates it. This is something, Rachel, that you and I have talked about before. We think Abby is 100% correct to teach kids correct terminology from a very young age. There's no reason, like, if a 3-year-old can pick up on calling something a grand jeté and then later learn all the reasons to call it a grand jeté, there's no reason to not label things correctly just because someone's 3. But because of all the other ways that Abby abuses her power, this tends to get overshadowed, or it becomes like parents think that she's like a crazy controlling dance teacher, which she is, but this isn't one of the reasons she's a crazy controlling dance teacher. This is a very good thing that she does, but it's always going to get lumped in with all the other wacky stuff she does, because who teaches 3-year-olds vocabulary? I have. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I used to teach 2 and 3-year-olds, and I got in trouble once for teaching 2-year-olds consequence. I was teaching 2-year-olds the word consequence, and the owner of the daycare walked by and said, "You can't use that word with them." I was like, "Give me a week." She came back and asked one of our 2-year-olds, "What does this word mean?" And he was like, "I need to sit myself down and calm down. I'm making sad choices, need a consequence." And I was like, any questions?
In doing trauma work, I have taught 5-year-olds parts of the brain and cortisol. And yes, I will give them kind of silly little nicknames because they need to know what this part of the brain does. But I give them, hey, this is your amygdala. It's your emotional remote control. And the remote control, turns the
Yes.
volume up, turns the volume down. It makes it concrete, and they make those connections. And
Like,
that's what she's doing. And she's
yes,
giving the
like you can
language
say,
across the board.
exactly, like you can say a grand jeté is when you fly through the air like a flying saucer. Using it in analogies versus just labeling it
Mhm.
flying saucer leap so the kid only knows to call it that.
I say I teach cortisol is your zappy brain juice. And I have had a kid who came back later and he was like, I think it's my zappy brain juice right now. And I was like, awesome. Yeah, your cortisol. And you restate it. But
Yes, you
also,
have y that's
what
what teaching vocab is. You have to reiterate it. You have to use the word multiple
Mhm.
times. They're not
and
gonna
one of
pick
the
it up right
things
away.
And one of the things that, I do as a trauma therapist is I encourage parents, hey, if this is something that your kid has experienced, this very personal and very private trauma, teach your kids the proper names for their parts so that when they, if they ever experience this, they have a means of communicating it. Because as we see in the deaf, if the deaf have language disfluency, if they don't have the words to
Mhm,
communicate what's going on, that stressor is going to be stuck. And that stuckness is what causes the trauma. So in
mhm,
giving
and
kids
it's a
words and giving
vicious
kids the
cycle.
vocabulary, it's better for them. Even if you feel like, oh, that's too advanced, grand jeté, plie, whatever. No, your kid knows it. Your kid will know it. It's fine. They will
They
be off,
have the
they're off for it.
So Abby finishes up the lesson with Vivi and says she thinks that she can do a duet with Mackenzie for this weekend. The moms are now upstairs and they're asking questions about Vivi. And in an interview, Abby tells us that there's this group of moms at her studio who run her customers out by making fun of other people's children. She's kind of alluding to the idea that it's this core group of moms. We don't know for sure. And we also know that these dance moms, there were other moms that were part of this group that just weren't chosen for filming. It's impossible to know. Um, Abby says that they should all go get jobs and come back at pickup time, which is ridiculous because the one mom of this group who has a job gets in trouble consistently for having to go to work and come back at pickup time. Kathy then meets the moms for the first time. Melissa introduces her. The moms say hi. Kathy asks what they're doing, and the moms reply that they're rhinestoning their costumes for the competition this weekend. Kathy asks if someone's going to do hers for her, and Melissa says no, she needs to learn to do it herself. And Kathy asks what happens if you don't know how to sew, and Chrissy says you'll have to learn. Kathy says that her studio, they have a seamstress who does all of this for them. The moms don't do any of it. And they're just much more organized than the ALDC. And the moms are offended. And Kelly asks, then why doesn't Kathy just go back to her own studio? And why doesn't she make her dance studio good enough for her own daughter? She doesn't understand driving over 2 hours to another studio. And they never really address this. Kathy just says, like, why don't I go back where I came from? And laughs. And then they never talk about it. Like, we never find out. I don't know if she didn't answer or if we just didn't get it in the edit. Chloe and Maddie are now working on their solos. Abby is spending a lot of time working with Maddie on her already perfected solo because Maddie's didn't require any changes instead of helping Chloe with the changes to her solo. Christy is running Chloe's solo with her at home instead to try and help her feel more prepared, but she knows she's not a dance teacher. She's starting to get stressed. This is bleeding onto Chloe. Christy knows there's only so much she can do because she's not a dance teacher. And we can tell that Christy is upset with just the whole situation. In an interview, Christy tells us that she wonders if Abby gave Chloe 1/20th of the attention that she gives to Maddie, what kind of dancer Chloe could be. And she feels really bad about continuously bringing her daughter back to such a toxic environment. She wonders about what it's doing to Chloe. And you get the feeling she's starting to feel trapped, which we kind of know she's headed towards because she's going to sign contracts not just with, she's already signed a contract with the ALDC, and because Chloe is a title winner, she can't leave for a year unless she pays an exorbitant amount of money, like $100,000 in cash, or takes Abby to court to get out of the contract. And then very soon she's going to have a contract, not just with Abby, but also with Lifetime, and not be able to leave. It's now the next day. The girls are running their dances. Kacie comes in late, and I'm not sure if this is because of production stuff or traffic from Ohio, but she comments on the moms still stoning costumes and says that she doesn't have to worry about that because she has someone doing hers for her because she's no stoner. And when she says this, Kelly makes this face like, oh, dear God, get this woman away from me. And it just, to me, this shows like Kacie already separating herself from the group. She doesn't want to, which, like, don't get me wrong, I know she didn't want to join the team, but she did want to be a part of the show.
Yeah. And I feel like it's almost like she's trying to establish herself as better than thou.
Which, like, how is that ever going to,
When
like, I
people
get
are-
if that's the character you wanted to portray, because again, she knew it was a show. That's fine. But the way the dance moms have talked about it, she didn't do anything behind the scenes to ingratiate herself to them either, except for maybe with Melissa. And I think that just made it hard for them to build any sort of connection to, you know, for all these weeks that they had to spend together. Be your character when the camera is on, but why are you not? I don't know. I think that just made things harder also for Kacie. Like, be your character when the cameras are on, but I don't know.
It also makes me like, I know we talked about it last time with, do we think that like she's just completely socially unaware of what's going on? Or conversely, do we think that it's intentional? Do we think there's a personality disorder there?
So I don't know, and that would be an interesting thing because there's footage that's come out recently of Kacie. I think she was on a video chat with Abby talking about the casting process for Dance Moms, and she was trying to get Vivi to show the producers her dance steps, and there was one in particular Kacie really wanted Vivi to show, and Vivi was tired and didn't want to do it. Kacie asked her, Vivi, are you hungry? And Vivi said, yeah. And Kacie said, okay, well, I'm not going to feed you until you show these nice men sugars, which is the name of the dance step. And I was just like, sorry, for those of us who can't see me, I'm just doing like the blank 1,000-yard stare because whoa, buddy, I hope Vivi's not still carrying that specific moment with you to this day, because boy howdy, that's a thing to say to a 5 or 6-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, it feels more like a narcissistic personality disorder. Like, I want to associate with these people who I know are going to elevate my status, and I'm going to promote myself as being of an exceptionally higher class. I'm going to I don't care about the feelings of other people as long as I get to be right. I'm going to exploit the advantage of others, or my expectations are going to be that people are just going to automatically comply with my demands.
So we're now starting Christy's breakdown of the episode. The moms are still stoning, and Kacie asks, like, how do you have time to do your housework? And the moms say, we don't. And Christy starts listing all the things she has to do at home. There's Cheerios all over her house. She has to vacuum. She needs to pack. There's laundry everywhere. Chloe has a lot of homework. And she thought she was going to be able to take Chloe home early. Kelly, tries to talk her through everything and calm her down, and it doesn't work. Christy goes to the front desk and asks Abby when she can expect Chloe to be done with her solo. And Abby says, well, they just have to fix this one part, but Chloe's needed in tap class. And Abby then asks Chloe, like, well, what do you want to do? Which I hate. Like, let's not put pressure on the 9-year-old to make the decision because she can tell her mom is upset. You can see on Christy's face that she's been crying.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime Abby's asking you a question, it's pressurized. Chloe then helps her mom out to the car, and Christy breaks down a little more and is just like profusely apologizing to Chloe, but also trying to rationalize taking Clara home because she'd had Clara with her and she needs to take her home to feed her. In an interview, Christy tells us that she didn't have the best childhood growing up, and she's trying to do better for her girls, and every choice she makes, she really always wants to make sure she's making the best choice for them, and she does that because she knows no one did that for her, but it's really hard when she doesn't know exactly what to do. Chloe goes back into the studio, and Abby tells her that all that crying and all that hugging with her mom was ridiculous because Maddie would never leave early. And dance is supposed to be Chloe's life right now, which is another thing that I hate. It's one thing if a child says, like, my life is dance, my life is cheerleading.
Mm-hmm.
But it's another thing for adults to say that to them. Don't do that.
I mean, you can say, hey, you know, this is you made a commitment to this, so this is kind of your job right now. But I don't think like it should not be your all-consuming life.
Right, like situationally, like your job for the next hour or your job for the next, like your job for today, but
Like,
not
school is your job.
Yeah, like this is your life right now. Her after school activity is not her life right now. Not for you to tell her that. She can feel that way if she wants.
Mm-hmm.
But as an adult, it's your job to help her find balance, not add to that.
We shouldn't be telling people how to feel anyway.
That's also true. Absolutely not. In an interview in the den right after this interaction with Abby at the front desk, Chloe tells us that Abby is pushing her to a level she didn't know she was supposed to be at yet. Sometimes
she's
she
not.
just needs, and sometimes she just needs a break, but she sees that it's a challenge and she's gonna take it. And this little interview just like broke my heart. I just wanted to scoop Chloe up and take her home and be like, nope, that's fine. She needs ice cream and a nap. She does not need this. She does not need this
same.
today. Right? Like, no. It is now competition day, and we're joining the moms and Abby getting ready to get on the bus. Abby shows up with her hair in a turban, which is like a towel turban, which is fine, except that if any of the moms or the girls showed up in any way bedraggled, she'd be screaming at them.
This was not the first time this is not the last time that we will see it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is the first, is not the last. The moms start loading up the bus, and Kathy is whining and upset because no one will load her stuff for her. She just dropped off her suitcases and got on the bus. And then when the bus driver asks, like, hey, is that anyone's stuff out the window? She's like, well, isn't anyone gonna help me with this? I'm just like, good Lord, lady, this is not helpful. Abby, they start down the road and Abby's already yelling at the bus driver, and Maddie in an interview says she doesn't know why Abby always yells at the bus driver because he knows what he's doing. They always get there anyway. Kathy gets bus sick very early on, and she cries and asks where if they're there yet the whole way there, which I always thought was funny because she's the oldest person on the bus. She's even older than Abby, and she's the one crying. And don't get me wrong, bus sickness is valid. It's miserable. But Kelly also points out that she should have sat at the front. She sat at the back with the kids, and sitting at the back, it's bouncier. It's a rougher ride. It's really not good for car sickness or bus sickness.
No.
And to sit at the back and then cry and whine and complain when you have the youngest kid on the team, she's sitting next to the youngest person. She's sitting with a whole bunch of kids, and she's the only one throwing a fit. It's funny to me. I'm sorry.
It makes me wonder how on earth they got to competitions at her studio.
Oh, so the moms have all addressed this. Before the show, they never took buses. They all drove independently. So at Kathy's studio, they would have done the same thing.
So did Abby just like pack her car full of girls if she was taking them all by herself?
Yeah, again, there's no
Maybe
logic to be had in
strapped a couple to
Uh-huh.
the ceiling
Mhm.
and
She got no,
a couple of them.
she got one of those U-Haul trailers, Rachel, and she stuffed them in there.
Well, I'm sure that
And
like Brooke and a couple of other kids probably just could have like folded themselves in suitcases.
yeah. Well, no, Brooke and Mackenzie folded themselves into the trunk, uh, Kiwi style or Kewpie style, and then or Pee-wee's. Sorry, the move is called a Pee-wee. And then all the other girls were stuffed into the U-Haul trailer attached to Abby's Cadillac. Maddie and Chloe have to get ready for their solos on the bus. This includes hair, makeup, and costumes, and stretching and warming up. This was another part of Kathy throwing a fit that I thought was so funny. Was these girls are having to like balance and put on their costumes in a stinky bus bathroom. If anyone's taken a charter bus, you know, like, and as choir girlies, Rachel and I are very attuned to this. Tour bus bathrooms stink so bad. They're having to put on these hundreds of dollars worth of costumes and not. Chloe's is freaking white and she has to not get hers dirty. Get their eye makeup done and not be difficult because, their moms are tired and it's early in the morning.
It makes me wonder how they did it before. Like, if they are getting ready on the bus.
The moms showed up on time or earlier, got them ready at the house, and then drove them.
That's a lot.
Like, well, that's how it goes when you do dance. But like, again, these girls are having to do all of this on the bus, get yelled at by Abby, and Melissa's doing the finicky thing with Abby, like, just be still, do and none of the girls are throwing a fit, but Kathy, who just has to sit there. Is it hot in here? Nope, it's just you. Like, even Melissa is frustrated with her, and it cracked me up. We finally arrive at competition, and we get shots of some of the other group dances, and everybody is covered from at least the neck down. We have some bare arms, but in a lot of competitions, you'd see girls dancing in bare legs and bare feet, but not really at this competition. Everyone is wearing opaque tights, so stuff you can't really see through, jazz shoes. Everyone is pretty well covered, and it's just foreshadowing what is to come with electricity. Chloe is getting ready to go on stage for her solo, and she says she's worried she won't hit all of her turns or remember all of the changes that were made to her solo, and she's just feeling a bit pressured. And sometimes she feels compared to Maddie, and she wishes that when they danced, it was just about each of them, and that when she danced, it was about her, and then when Maddie danced, it was about Maddie, and she doesn't think it's fair that they're compared because they're different people. And again, this is just one of those moments where
wise beyond her years.
Wise beyond her years, but again, you just want to pick her up and take her to Dairy Queen or something and get her a treat, because they shot this. You can see people dancing on the stage behind her. She's in her costume. This wasn't a talking head they had her do after, or this is in the moment. She's about to go on stage and do her solo. And like, stay away from her. Get a job. Like, leave her alone, the poor baby. But she goes on stage and she hits her solo. I think Chloe doing musical theater is so underrated. People love to watch her do contemporary and lyrical, and don't get me wrong, she does amazing in those parts, but her doing like a cute, sassy little musical theater, she is she's adorable, and I love it, and I love it. Christy greets Chloe as she comes off stage, scoops her up, gives her a big squeeze, and tells her she did a good job. Abby comes over and says she did well, but she does still need to work on a part. Then Maddie goes on stage for her solo, and we get the debut of the now sort of infamous solo cry, because it's going to come back around and not in a great way.
A couple times.
That's true. That is true. I was thinking about one specific time, and I'm betting it was a different one from the one you were thinking. I don't know if this is exactly the the episode that made #MaddieFace trend on Twitter, but I do know that this is the solo that when you say Maddie Face to people, this is the solo people are thinking of, because they show clips of this solo throughout the series. And this is her very first solo. Her emotional execution is amazing. And the dance is very good. And she's doing a front aerial, which is an exceptionally hard leap to do for anybody, let alone an 8-year-old. And it's very, very good. We cut to Abby in an interview saying that if she had to evaluate Maddie and Chloe's performances for the day, she'd say they were neck and neck, and she thinks they both came to perform and to win, which is it's nice to hear. Yeah, it's nice to hear Abby saying something equitable.
It's about the nicest thing she will say for the rest of the series, really.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even for the rest of the episode, we've already hit peak Abby niceness. Maddie comes off stage and Abby only praises her. No corrections are given. And maybe Maddie was perfect, but also maybe Abby was saving corrections for off camera. Now we're at solo awards, and they don't show us the top 5 announcement. They don't tell us the categories. They just show us Maddie winning and getting crowned. The girls would have been in different categories because Chloe was musical theater and Maddie was contemporary. We also don't know the age brackets here, and Maddie was 8 and Chloe was 9. So they just show us Maddie winning and getting crowned. We don't know if this was an overall. I don't know. And then they show us Chloe looking sad while Abby says in a voiceover that she expects nothing less of Maddie. Now it is time for the duet. Kacie is running around like a chicken with her head cut off before the girls go on stage.
Shocker.
Vivi says she has to travel. Vivi says she has to travel a lot for competition, but she wishes she could just stay home.
Mood.
All hail
Mood.
Queen Vivi.
I feel so much like Vivi. Like, I'm a combination, I think, between like Christy and Vivi. Like, Vivi is a mood.
Vivi is so a mood. I feel like at this point in her life, Vivi would have benefited a lot from just staying at home in Ohio and doing rec classes. She didn't need to be in competition all the time. She would have had to have gone with her mom to competition, but there are a lot of studio kids who go with their parents but don't compete.
Yeah.
Maybe she does like a duet every once in a while, but she does not need to be doing stuff all the time. So Vivi and Mackenzie take the stage, and they are absolutely adorable. I actually really love this duet. I think it's classic early Dance Moms. It is not overly produced. It's silly and goofy and cutesy and
so age appropriate.
So age appropriate and adorable, and the girls look so cute in their super 2010s costumes, and their facial expressions are adorable, and I just love it.
In comparison to the group dance.
Oh yes, absolutely. This is a breath of fresh air compared to what we're about to see. Kacie then says in an interview that she originally thought that Mackenzie was just going to be head and shoulders above Vivi as far as dance ability goes, but she doesn't think that turned out to be true. I would love to think that this is the producers asking Kacie to say something like this, but I can't be sure. And even if the producers asked her to say this, like, Kacie, why would you? Don't talk about the kids.
Because Kacie is a narcissist and has to be the best.
Yep, fair enough. One thing I noticed this watch through that I don't know that I ever noticed before, they never tell us how the duet placed. We never go to duet awards. Like, I don't know if they weren't adjudicated and they just performed or what, but Abby meets them when they come off stage, says she thinks they did a good job, but they got a long way to go, and then we got to go backstage and get the big girls ready. And the big girls are getting ready, and Abby is yelling at them that they're in a bare midriff, so they better do 100 sit-ups or paint on some abs. The moms are in the hallway discussing the costumes and the way the men at the hotel have been looking at their daughters.
Rubbernecking.
Rubbernecking as the girls walk by, and they don't want to be the ones to make their kids feel bad or like send mixed messages, but they're really worried. And
I also think that could have been an appropriate time for these parents to bring a robe for their child to put over their costumes so they can do their makeup and it won't dirty their costume, and they can go and walk to backstage without pervy men having to look at them.
So the thing about the robe that you just said is the next shot we get is the girls coming down the stairs in those costumes. You can tell this is a heavily produced shot. The producers made them do this. I don't think if the moms had brought like even their little pink terry cloth jackets that the girls had with their names on the back, I don't think the producers would have let them wear them because I think they were getting shots all over the hotel of the girls in their costumes. And so I don't think even if the moms had them with them and were having them put them on in between these shots, I think producers were getting a lot of shots of the girls in the costumes, and I don't think they had a say.
Which
Between this and
that's crazy.
Abby wanting to get pictures, I don't think there was a lot of options, and I don't think they knew how to approach this because this was a new experience. They'd never been in a costume like this at a dance competition like this with producers and cameras.
Which
So I don't
makes
think they knew
you
what to do.
wonder, like, the producers and their criminal records, potentially.
Oh, there have been some people associated with Dance Moms who've done some yucky stuff, but the producers, even the ones who didn't do, they knew what they were going for. They knew this was going to be shocking, and they knew what would make people look. The girls take the stage, and the dance is edited with cuts to audience reactions in air quotes because, again, I'm sure that the audience was shocked, but I don't know that these are genuine audience reactions because they're close-ups of people. Usually in TV, when that happens, it's producers have gone up to people and asked, hey, can we get a shot of you doing this? Of people being shocked, and footage of the moms, which I think is in real time, being upset because it's from further away. And we hear Holly in an interview telling us not hear her, we see her, she's outside the ballroom, telling us she hopes no one she knows ever sees her daughter doing this dance. And Melissa saying that her little Maddie, which I thought was funny because in later seasons we get My Little Kendall. Melissa says her little Maddie doesn't even know what sexy is. She's just having fun and shaking her little butt. And I feel like this was heavily produced and is just another moment of the producers making Melissa say something that is really not helping Melissa at all. And Melissa does not necessarily need help not helping Melissa. The group dance finishes and we head right into awards. They announce the top 5 and none of them are the ALDC. And while they announce the top 5, they show glimpses of all the dances that won, and the dances all have like very full coverage costumes. And the clips that they show of the dances aren't complimentary clips of the dancers. Like the technique doesn't look great. The execution doesn't look great, and the choreography looks like which maybe those were just bad shots of the dances.
And also Holly say that she wondered if they were going to get disqualified?
Well, yes, and there was a lot of talk about potential disqualification throughout the week, and now they're wondering if maybe those chickens came home to roost, because if those performances that we were shown glimpses of during awards were how the performances were the entire length of the dance, the girls on the ALDC team did outdance and outperform the other groups, but it didn't matter because there are often clauses in competition registration materials that say they have to be age appropriate material, and obviously this was not. The girls come out of awards and Holly tries to comfort the girls saying they danced well, and Nia says maybe it was just a little inappropriate. And
I freaking love Nia.
I do too. She's another one who's
Holly's like,
beyond her years.
She said it, not me.
Yep. Christy's like, you took the words right out of my mouth, and Holly says, out of the mouths of babes. Abby comes over and does her. She just Abby's all over the girls. She goes, "It's not fun to lose, is it?" And the girls are like shaking their heads, no, like I don't know what to say in this moment. And then Abby says, well, maybe the judges just didn't like you today, but hey, maybe I didn't like what they were wearing. And I'm just like, Abby, even for you, this is weird. Stop. Like, it sounds like maybe you meant to say maybe the judges didn't like what they were wearing, but like when you tell a group of little girls, maybe the judges just didn't like you today, like, ew. Abby then dismisses the girls to go get changed, making sure to tell them to take lots of pictures. And
Why
Christy
was
and
that
Holly say, like,
important?
I don't know, and I'm aware that I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Christy and Holly ask if they can talk with Abby privately. They tell Abby this dance and the costume made them extremely uncomfortable, and they found the content inappropriate for this age. Holly points out that at one point in the dance, Nia was smacking her butt, and she's 9 years old. And Abby deflects and tells the moms that their what's weird is their 9-year-olds loved it and wanted to do it. Again, like blaming the girls, but also thinking that because the girls wanted to do it, that it completely absolves her.
It's giving victim blaming for me.
It's giving victim blaming, and also, so like half of it is very much like, well, if you think it's so bad, you should be worried because your kids loved it and wanted to do it. But it's also giving, like, it doesn't matter because your kid wanted to do it. Like, it's not me.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to talk to anyone, go talk to your kid. Like, it's giving victim blaming, but it's also giving,
refusing to take responsibility.
Yeah, refusing to take responsibility. Like, I can't do anything about it. Holly realizes that Abby's never going to listen, because of course she's never going to listen. And Holly says, I'm a mom, I'm emotional, and I need to leave right now. Which I think, like, spotlight on Holly, diffusing the situation, but also saying, like, here's what's happening.
She's the most emotionally intelligent of the bunch.
Absolutely. And
that's probably why Nia is so resilient.
Absolutely. 100%. Decidedly. And she and Christy then leave. And we get Abby in an interview telling us that Holly and Christy verbally assaulted her.
Yeah.
And that the moms need to realize that everyone is replaceable. This is the first mention of everyone being replaceable. And this is something that will come back to haunt us over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And if you think I said that too many times, you would be wrong.
No.
Because actually I said it too few times.
Mm-hmm.
And that while Chloe is a talented little girl, it is clear that her mother is going to destroy her. And again, this is the first time I picked up on this during this watch through. I found it weird that while Christy and Holly was the one who did the majority of the talking, approached her to talk about this, she picks out Chloe and she says her mom's going to destroy her.
Makes you wonder what exactly she had specifically against Christy.
Well, we know that she had already decided she didn't like her, and this is like from Abby's own admission. She, like, but before the show had started filming, she didn't like Christy. And I don't know that Abby has ever put to words why she didn't like Christy before the show started filming. She has put to words why she didn't like Christy moving forward, but that hadn't started at this point yet. She thinks that the show changed Christy in some ways that we can get into once we get further into the show. But none of this had happened yet. So I was really struck by her saying this. I was like, what is the point? Why are you? And we know she picked on Nia for specific things. Abby is racist. We're just going to say it. Abby is racist, and she picks on Nia for things related to Nia's race and ethnicity. But she didn't say anything about Nia at the end of this. She just said something about Chloe. And why? What is the point? What is she driving at? So that brings us to the end of season 1, episode 2. And what do we think are some resources that our friends need to be aware of
I mean, I think what we already have in our link tree
Mhm.
and will be posted with the episode on YouTube. You can find our link tree connected to both Instagram and TikTok. Um, and that is primarily bullying resources,
Yeah.
anti-bullying resources. And if
I
you
would
need
say
help
I
finding a
would say
therapist.
definitely our hotlines this week, because while
Mhm.
we do have a link to Psychology Today, I know that therapy is not necessarily inexpensive. And if you find yourself in a situation, especially like the one that we talked about Christy being in
Mhm.
earlier, where everything is all of a sudden just crushing down on you and you're in a moment of pure dread and pure panic, you may not have the ability to sort through locating and finding the best therapist for yourself. That's something you want to do after you've gotten
Mhm.
through the moment of pure dread and pure panic. So you want to reach out to those hotlines. People often think that those are only relegated for moments of absolute
Mhm.
end of times moments, but they can help in other ways, or they can also give you um, other resources if they feel that they can't help you. So never
Mhm.
wonder if you should call. If you're wondering, hey, should I call? Yes, you
You
should
probably
call.
should call. Mhm.
Yeah.
Or
So
text. There is a crisis text line as well, and I'm not sure if
yes.
we do have that on there, but if you just text the word start to 741-741, then you can text it, especially if you're in a situation where you don't feel comfortable speaking out loud or you're afraid that somebody's going to be listening in.
And we will make sure to add that, because that is an important one. It has been a wonderful time breaking down this episode with you, Rachel. What are your takeaways for this episode?
I think just looking back and then looking at the present time, just how that emotional regulation and emotional intelligence of the parent absolutely impacts the resilience of the child as they grow up and come out of stressful situations. Because Nia is probably the most adapted of of the group. She has gone to Washington and met the president and engaged in lots of advocacy work. And while the other girls have done incredible for themselves, um, I do find that Nia has an elegance in her advocacy for other people that I don't necessarily see with the other girls. It's not a bad thing that I don't see it with the other girls. It's just an emotional intelligence thing.
Absolutely. And I think my takeaways for the week are not to tell children what should be important to them in their lives. You can tell them what they need to be focused on in a moment, but not what they need to focus on long term. That can stunt them and make them question their own interests. And also that I really and truly do not understand the East Coast. Safe. Um, as always, I am Kacie, not Rachel.
And I'm Rachel, not Kacie.
And thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Bye.
CBT in the TV is hosted by Rachel Sprague and Kacie Campbell. Our show is produced by Rachel Sprague, Kacie Campbell, and Yakov Paley. Editing by Yakov Paley. Our theme song was written, composed, and performed by Emily McNally. Please join us on Instagram and TikTok at CBT in the TV for even more fun and access to the resources mentioned in today's episode. Thanks for joining us.